Namaste and Swagatam again on the course on Introduction to Indian Psychology. We've been looking at the different realizations that happen once we practice the techniques of consciousness that we looked at in week 9. In week 10, we started with the understanding of Sukha. So when we do these different practices, one of the realizations one has is of that inner happiness, that creation of excellent spaces, which was one way of looking at what Sukha stands for, and the corollary idea of becoming a self-architect. So how do you design your inner spaces in order to experience the best quality of life within and without? Today's lecture is going to be on the concept of swasthya. So we've looked at the internal space. Now let's look at the structure, the body, and how does the body reflect this good health. So swasthya, and what all does swasthya entail? Is it only physical health or does it entail other health components as well? The lecture overview, we are going to look at swasthya, which is the epitome of self-mastery through consciousness. We'll look at the introduction to swasthya, which is moving beyond the mere absence of disease to dynamic self-mastery, significance and etymology of the term, the foundational roots of well-being in classical Indian thought, some key definitions. We'll explore classical texts like Charaka, Sushruta, Patanjali and the Gita, and then the main definition of swasthya, which would be the deconstructing of Sushruta Samhita's paradigm of absolute health, WHO and Vedanta dimensions. So here we look at integrating modern global standards with classical paradigms. The 5 sheets of the Panchakosha and the multidimensional architecture of human existence, and in the context of swasthya, the role of bliss or ananda, understanding the true health as a state of transcendental happiness, and then techniques of consciousness, practical tools for bridging the mind and body and spirit, similarities with Western psychology, followed by applications, and finally we'll end with exercises, glossary, references and food for thought. So, introduction and context setting, why we must redefine health. The modern crisis is that contemporary healthcare heavily prioritizes pathogenesis, which is treating of disease, over salutogenesis, which is cultivating health. We looked at the concept of salutogenesis and seen that it is quite a comprehensive idea of the sense of coherence. And therefore, we need to look at what new ways we can understand our body and the relationship with mind, spirit, emotions, etc. The missing link, so physical health alone cannot resolve burnout, existential anxiety or emotional dysregularity. Consciousness as medicine, therefore, what is needed is the true well-being that requires active intentional engagement with one's own internal landscape. And therefore, there is a need for a paradigm shift. Health is not a static baseline, it is a dynamic practice of self-mastery where the physical body and the conscious mind operate in complete harmony. And therefore, modern health often defines health as the absence of disease, but in contrast, the Indian worldview sees health as a positive, vibrant state of existence. And swasthya, which means health, is not a static goal, but a dynamic equilibrium of physical, mental and spiritual forces. We'll try and unravel this as we go ahead. So what's the significance of swasthya? This is the foundation of human potential. According to the Charaka Samhita, the definition is dharmartha kama mokshanam arogyam moolam uttamam. So what is this saying? That health is the supreme foundation for the pursuit of duty, dharma, wealth, artha, desire, kama and liberation or moksha. So without health, none of those pursuits would make any sense. And therefore, the prerequisite for the purpose is that without a stable physical and mental foundation, higher goals and self-actualization become exponentially more difficult. And it's impractical to think of trying to achieve great things if the basics are not in place. And what about inner resilience? It's a state of deep health that creates an internal architecture capable of withstanding external chaos. So when we talk of the immunity system, is that immunity system only dependent on our external features or, the different kinds of chemical composition with the body? Or is it also deeply intertwined with the state of mind, the emotions, etc.? Etymology of swasthya, rooted in the self. So the word swasthya itself is formed of 2 phonemes which are Swa, which means one's own, the self or the soul, and stha, which means situated, abiding, established, or grounded. Literally, the meaning is swasmin tishtati iti swasthaha. So that's the grammatical derivation of the term, and it is to be situated in one's own self. The philosophical implication here is that health is not a product acquired externally, it is a return to our natural balanced state. And disease, which is vyadhi, represents an alienation from the self, while swasthya is a homecoming or coming back home. And this is also what we had seen when we looked at the Triguna model. We had seen that when there is a lot of this tamasic vibrational patterns, it leads to dis-ease, and the natural state, because we are fundamentally made of consciousness stuff which is free of any kind of entanglements and in its own nature is pure and full of bliss and alignments. Therefore, swasthya is about moving from a tamasic stage to a sattvic stage. It's going from a diseased aberration to a state of normalcy, which is being aligned in one's higher consciousness. So some important definitions from relevant sources. So here we have some perspectives on inner mastery. From the Yoga Sutra, we had the definition which is tada drashtuhu swarupe avasthanam. So what happens when yoga chitta vritti nirodha, when we are able to align all our thought patterns, what takes place? Tada, then the seer, the drashta, abides in his own true nature. And when that happens, then we have swasthya, because we are established in the self. Then samatvam yoga uchyate, says the Bhagavad Gita, which means equanimity of mind is called yoga. And these classical definitions highlight that supreme well-being and self-mastery are achieved when the mind is no longer fluctuating, allowing the individual to rest in pure, undisturbed consciousness. What is the main definition of swasthya that we find in the Sushruta Samhita? So he says that samadoshaha samagnischa samadhatu malakriyaha prasannatmendriya manaha swastha ityabhidhiyate. So here we have the translation, which is one whose bioenergies, which is the doshas, metabolic fire, agni, the tissues, dhatu, and waste elimination or mala are balanced, and whose soul, so it's not just the physiological features, we also have one whose soul, the atman, senses, indriya, the mind, manas, are tranquil, clear and blissful, prasanna. Such a person is called healthy. And we see that the doshas therefore must be in equilibrium, the agni, the digestive fire must be balanced, the dhatus, the tissues must be nourished, mala, the waste must be eliminated in a timely manner, and prasanna, the rest of the being, the mind, the senses, all of them should be pleasant, clear, and there should be a clear state of soul and mind. And therefore, there is this dual approach. This definition perfectly bridges physiological equilibrium with psychological and spiritual clarity. What's the pan of swasthya? So we've seen the Sankhya understanding of the evolutes of consciousness from Prakriti, Purusha and Prakriti combination, and that is the basis of the Ayurveda Shastra. So we see that it's a very complex, multi-layered nature, whereas in the other one, the allopathic, the mainstream medicine tends to view the human being as being primarily body and with organs, etc. So if you have a problem with the lung, they will only treat the lung and accordingly. But if you look at any alternative medicines, more holistic medicines, they'll see that if you have a problem, let's say if you have a headache, they will possibly give you a medicine for your digestion, or they'll give you a medicine for some other part of the body that is interconnected and might be in imbalance, which is resulting in a symptom of a headache. And so it's not just about treating the symptom, but going to the root of the problem. So here are some principles of balance. So central to swasthya is the concept of a dynamic balance. Health requires harmony among the doshas, which are the biological regulatory principles, Agni or the digestive and metabolic fire, the dhatu, the body tissues, the mala, the waste products, manas, the mind, indriya, the senses, and atman, the conscious self. So if there is a disturbance in any dimension, they can disrupt the overall well-being because it's a totally integrated, interconnected system. What are the three doshas? So you have vata, pitta, kapaha, shariram dharayanti. So the translation is that Vata, Pitta and Kapha sustain the body. And we've also seen that these Vata, Pitta and Kapha are combinations of the 5 elements. We see that the combination of earth and water is Kapha, the combination of water and fire, rare combination is Pitta, and then of air and space is Vata. And if these combinations are in excess or they are not in balance, then there is likely to be some kind of an imbalance resulting in a diseased symptom. So the body operates through 3 regulatory principles: Vata, which is the movement, communication, nervous activity. So all of that is connected, and therefore we had also seen in Vak Sanyama, Prajnaparadha. So there was a problem of someone who talks too much, so that alapa, that extra alapa which can cause imbalance in the individual. Pitta, transformation, digestion, metabolism. So if you have got weak fire, that individual will have other kinds of problems. If you have too much of Pitta, then that will also result in different kinds of physiological and psychological disturbances. Kapha is about stability, structure and the lubrication of the system, and an excess and a less amount of that will also result in different kinds of problems in the body and the mind. So health requires proportional balance among these forces, and imbalance leads to physiological and psychological disorders. So what are some physiological features of swasthya? Sama dosha, balanced doshas, lightness in body, no bloating, burning or heaviness, normal sleep and appetite, and stable mood and energy. Samagni, so balanced digestion or agni, good appetite, no constipation or diarrhea, no indigestion or gas, and clear tongue, no thick coating. And this is something that is very important for all of us to know as a daily practice. When you get up in the morning and you're brushing your teeth, it's very important to clear what we call the ama, which means that the body during the night prepares its own cure and removes all the toxin, because the body is a very intelligent instrument. It does that repair during the night, and they also say the best time that it does is if you're sleeping between 10 and 2. That's the time when the body really engages in terms of the circadian rhythm or the natural rhythm in repairing and healing the body, and it deposits all the toxins and the things to be rejected on the tip of the tongue. So in the morning while brushing, it's a very important idea to do a tongue cleaning, and they say that if you remove this ama every morning, then you will be spared a big part of diseases in your life. The other thing that is a very healthy practice is oil pulling. So if you put a little bit of sesame oil or different oils depending on your bodily requirements, and just put a little bit of oil and keep gargling in your mouth for maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes, it also helps to lubricate the inner body and cool it down. Okay, just like in a machine, in a car, you need to put lubricants to cool down the engine. This oil pulling is supposed to be very effective in cooling down the body. And a last practice in this, which can be very, very helpful, is the application of oil, the abhyanga. So once in a week, they recommend doing an oil bath. So nicely massage your body with oil a few minutes before your bath and then clean yourselves up. So these are some practices that are not just about maintaining the body, but also about balancing the fire within the body. Samadhatu or balanced tissues. So this is about having good skin tone, stable muscle mass, balanced weight, strong bones and immunity, and healthy reproductive function. Malakriya, so proper waste elimination, regular bowel movements. So every morning it is highly recommended that one should be able to eliminate. In fact, sometimes they say twice a day is a good idea also. But at least every morning to be able to eliminate the bowels or to be able to free the bowels is a very healthy practice. Then normal urine color and frequency, normal sweating and no foul odor or obstruction. Okay. So what is important again here is to ensure that you're drinking enough water. And they also recommend that while drinking water, one should be seated so that there is no kind of, maleffect of drinking water while standing. It's not recommended. So these practices that we have of standing and eating, standing and drinking, these are not the Ayurvedic prescriptions of how one should either eat or drink one's food. And of course, this hurried stuff of, I'm just catching a bite and running and all, these were absolutely not recommended in Ayurveda, though modern lifestyle is full of these practices or malpractices, if you might say so. But if we want to preserve health, arogya, then we need to pay attention to these. And we all know that it's easier said than done. But if one has the ideals in mind, then one can keep trying to implement them as and when possible for one's own well-being at the end of the day. It's for very selfish reasons. Psychological features of swasthya. So, prasanna atmendriya manaha. So, prasanna atma indriya manaha, inner well-being. What does it pertain to? So, you have calm, focused mind, positive emotions, clear sensory perceptions, inner satisfaction and stability, and the feeling of lightness in mind and senses. It will also relate to the non-hankering of material objects and the constant need of the senses to go outward. But because of the internal quiet that is there, then there is a balance that is maintained between the inner atmosphere and the outer relationship with the world. So let's look at the WHO definition of health. So it defined health in 1948, where it says that health is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. It says that health is more than just the lack of illness and includes a personal, physical, mental and social state. So physical well-being, this refers to the absence of physical illness or disease and a functioning body. What about mental well-being? This includes one's emotional and psychological state, not just the absence of mental disorders. Social well-being, this relates to an individual's ability to interact with others and function within their community. The overlap, so both the WHO and classical Indian systems firmly reject the absence of disease as the sole marker of health. The classical extension is that the paradigm of swasthya explicitly demands the inclusion of Atman and the mastery of Indriyas as a diagnostic criteria for true holistic health. And this is something that is missing in the WHO definition. So, the dimension of the inner being, and therefore when we talk of integral well-being, we have to remember that there are two words there, wellness and being. So, depending on how we are defining the word being and different models of humanity or different models of the human being in different schools would correspond to different models of wellness. This is something that's important to understand. So, if you have a more integral concept of the being, the more integral model of the being, that would automatically correspond to a more complete concept of wellness, which includes all those different factors as well. So, integral well-being is a more holistic kind of an understanding of a model of a human being that includes the Panchakosha layers of the human being. Dimensions of swasthya, physical and vital. So, we see that the outer vehicles of consciousness are Annamaya Kosha, that's the physical sheath, and mastery here involves conscious regulation of diet, sleep and physical movement to ensure the bodily vehicle is pure and unobstructed. The pranayama kosha, this is the vital energy sheath. Mastery involves the regulation of the autonomic nervous system and the flow of life force through breath, serving as the bridge between the physical body and the mind. And we've looked at these in the techniques of consciousness, of how we can regulate and become conscious in the first place of the way in which we are breathing, and to breathe in ways that will bring harmony and balance in the system. Similarly, with the Annamaya Kosha, we need to engage in those exercises, in those routines, the dinacharya that Ayurveda talks about, in order to ensure that we have a healthy routine which can facilitate a healthy body and a healthy mind. Dimensions of swasthya from a mental and intellectual perspective. So, we're looking at the inner realms of mastery. So, Manomaya Kosha, this is the mental sheath, and cultivating it implies emotional regulation, positive connections and deeply held contentment or santosha. So, if one nurtures santosha as a practice in life, this you will find automatically strengthens the immune system and makes one resistant to whatever kinds of stress that one might be going through or facing from outside. So, that is a very important quality to acquire. So, when we talk of self-architecture, so create an architecture, design your inner spaces in a manner that you can experience santosha, which also implies the balance between internal needs and external temptations. How do you find that thin balance which can allow you to be contented with what is there and yet not become complacent? So, thin lines, but worth thinking about. Vijnanamaya Kosha, so this is the intuitive intellectual sheath, and developing deep self-inquiry, critical reflection, and the wisdom to make life-affirming choices, preventing prajnaparada or crimes against one's own wisdom becomes a key practice in order to cultivate and nourish well-being in the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Dimensions of swasthya and the role of bliss. So consciousness, the ultimate well-being. In the Ayurvedic tradition, we look at the Purusha-Prakriti relationship. In the Vedantic tradition, it's about Brahman. And the Purusha consciousness as well as the Brahman consciousness both have the underlying features of Ananda as the basic substratum of consciousness. So Anandamaya Kosha, that's the final, deepest, fundamental layer of our existence. This is the blissful sheath, and the experiential realization of existential joy and interconnectedness is a sure way of ensuring absolute bliss and well-being in the body. But just one thing, that sometimes this experience can also be limited to a psychological experience and the body can be ill. So this is where integral yoga talks about making that experience or embodying that experience into the very physical materiality of our body and then going through the process of transformation. So it's talking about the psychic transformation, which is first about realizing that inner bliss and allowing that to become our guide. Next is the spiritual transformation, where we connect to the higher forces of the consciousness and allow that to become our guide. And finally, the very materiality, the very gross stuff which has separated itself in its expression from the consciousness stuff must reflect or must manifest that divinity and that light and all those properties of bliss, Sat, Chit and Ananda within existence itself. So we are looking at moving beyond ordinary pleasure. So here true health transcends mere sensual pleasure or sukha, but sukha, not the sukha or pleasing to the senses. You're looking at the other dimension of sukha, which was excellent spaces, yo vai bhuma tat sukham, that we've just looked at. So that's what we're referring to here. It culminates in Brahmananda, an existential transcendental happiness that is the core of human identity, and health as self-realization. So in the Vedantic tradition, bliss is considered the essential nature of the individual personality. Therefore, to be truly healthy or swastha is to be naturally experiencing this boundless joy. For those who have attained this blissful state once, it becomes the baseline for all their future actions. Arriving at that baseline is the task, and that's why we talked of the techniques of consciousness. But even having that and trying to experience that in one's state of meditation, in one's imagination, are ways in which we can start rewiring our system to open up channels to becoming that form of bliss and acquiring that state of health. Techniques of consciousness for self-mastery, so tools for inner architecture, dhyana or meditation. This is the sustained focus of consciousness that rewires neural pathways, reduces biological stress and brings the mind into a state of prasanna. So being happy and contented. Pranayama, so breath regulation, the physiological remote control for the brain. And by mastering the breath, one masters the life force, effectively shifting the nervous system from a state of survival to a state of calm awareness. So making the shift between the sympathetic nervous system that is now constantly awake and functioning due to the pressures of deadlines that we are all living, to the more relaxed state of parasympathetic nervous systems, which is what pranayama can very effectively activate in the individual's being. Techniques of consciousness for self-mastery, integration into daily life. So here is a practice of swadhyaya, which is self-study. And this is the continuous practice of introspective observation, tracking one's own emotional triggers, habits and energetic fluctuations to make conscious real-time corrections. And this idea of having a metacognition is supposed to be one of the most highest forms of intelligence. Because when we think about something, we have cognition about something. But metacognition is how you think about how you think. And that is a quality that is worth cultivating. So self-study here also can mean another thing. It can also mean the study of scriptures. So when you study those, then we are constantly reminded of how we need to lead more meaningful, more mindful lives. And the next important idea is dinacharya, which is the conscious routine, aligning one's biological clock with the rhythms of nature. Self-mastery is proven in the discipline of grounding daily habits rather than just transient meditative experiences. So in those meditative experiences, one can have a sense of, great realization. But then it is when we are able to actually bring it into daily routine and practice. So abhyasa, if you remember, dirgha kala nairantarya satkara sevitaha dridha bhumihi. So when we bring it into practice, then those part-time movements or part-time experiences then become anchored into the neural pathways and lead to greater sense of well-being. So here there are parallels between Swasthya and Western psychology. The core insight is that modern Western psychology is increasingly adopting frameworks that mirror the ancient Indian concept of Swasthya or holistic well-being and humanistic psychology and authentic self. So we have the Western concept here of Rogers' congruence and Maslow's self-actualization. Their Indian parallel is the mirroring of the exact definitions of Swasthya, which is being anchored in one's true nature of Swastha, which is what self-actualization seeks to realize. When positive psychology and flourishing, we have the Western concept which focuses on cultivating optimal functioning, not just treating pathology. The Indian parallel here aligns with the Ayurvedic view of Swasthya as an active state of vibrant holistic health. The third wave of CBT and equanimity, here it emphasizes the developing of an observing self and psychological flexibility. And even without reading what is the next line, you can tell me what it is. Yes. So it is the Sakshi Bhava. How do you develop the witness consciousness? So the Indian parallel here is the perfect mapping to the cultivation of Samatva or equanimity, which is essential for Manasa Swasthya or mental health. The biopsychosocial model, here the Western concept recognizes the inseparable link between physical health, mental state and the environment. The Indian parallel here is that it echoes the holistic framework where physical humors or the doshas and psychological qualities, the gunas, are deeply intertwined. I'd also like to add a very important idea here, that of One Health. So today WHO is talking of One Health, where we see that it's not just the human being's health, but it is connected to the health of the environment, to the health of society, etc. You remember we talked about the Ayurvedic concept of Hitahara. So the concept of Hitahara that we've seen earlier, it corresponds to the idea of the fact that from production to consumption, food that does not cause harm to anything beyond its required measure. And when we consume something like that, then we live in harmony with everything around us also, and with that respect with everything that we are dependent on. So while WHO looks at it as a new idea of One Health, in the Indic context, especially in Ayurvedic traditions, this idea of one's well-being does not just depend on how well I am feeling, but my well-being can only happen if everything around me is well. This is a very, very, very important idea. And we see this as a marked difference with different scales of well-being that we find versus an integral well-being skill that we are trying to develop. So now, Western psychology spent its first century studying what goes wrong with the mind. And Indian psychology has always started with the blueprint of what it means to be fully right or swasthya. Western science is now building a bridge to that same destination. Application of swasthya in modern psychology. So the core definition is that the noun swasthya or holistic well-being is derived from the state of being swastha. Swasmin sthitaha, established in one's true nature. What are some key psychological applications? So it's beyond pathology. There is a shift in the clinical focus from simply managing symptoms to actively cultivating holistic flourishing or swasthya. Authentic alignment. So this frames mental healing as a process of self-remembering to resolve ego-driven alienation and failures of intellect or prajnaparadha. Psychological equanimity or samatvam. So this is the true mental health, manasa swasthya, which trains the mind to remain deeply anchored and resilient amidst external life fluctuations. So we see that, in terms of vibrations, if every little fluctuation from outside starts creating its impact within the individual, then one can never be at ease. But that ease comes when one has such a state of mind that no matter what the noise around is, one will still be in a dead calm within oneself. Okay, so this is the idea of swasthya. It's not that one is insensitive or numb to what is happening outside, but one has the control of not allowing the external to disturb the internal. And just because that presence exists, it can serve as a light to bring calm and clarity in the environment around it. In fact, that's what the mother says. She says, if you want to bring change, then become that center of light, which by the very fact that it exists compels the rest of the world to change itself. And that is what is an attempt to move towards that samatvam in oneself. Biopsychospiritual integration. So this eliminates mind-body dualism. Mental health is inseparable from physiological balance, the harmony of the doshas, and spiritual clarity, the cultivation of sattva. So while traditional Western therapy often asks, how do we fix what is wrong with you? The paradigm of Swasthya asks, how do we return you to who you really are? And this is an interesting idea which is captured in a Sanskrit term for treatment and healing. So the term is chikitsa, which is not about treating somebody with medications, but it means finding the right consciousness. So how do we find that consciousness which is really aligned or connected to our deepest self, that drashta within? So chitta vritti nirodha, and drashta is swarupe avasthanam, is established in the self, radiating out into all the different levels, all the different panchakosha levels, bringing good health and well-being. An exercise, and this is a daily swasthya audit. So the practice here is that for the next 24 hours, set an alarm for 3 random times during the day. And whenever the alarm rings, pause entirely and assess your state using the Sushruta criteria, which is his definition of health. So see what kind of state of mind, senses, bodily functions are you experiencing at that point. So the physical check would be, is my breathing shallow or deep? Is there tension in my jaw or shoulders? The sensory check would be, are my senses, indriyas, overstimulated by screens or noise, or are they anchored? And where are they anchored? Next, consciousness check, is my mind, manas, agitated, or is it prasanna? And then finally the action, execute one immediate micro adjustment, 3 deep breaths, closing your eyes for just 60 seconds to return to swastha, established in the self. So this exercise could be very helpful to just bring you back to yourself from your entanglements and engagements with everything that exteriorizes your life and your energy. Glossary of important terms. References. Moving on. Food for thought. I thought I'll just end with this short story here. There was an Ayurveda Vaidya who would always be passing under a tree on his way to the river. And he would hear this bird that is chirping, and the sound that it made was koruk, koruk, koruk. And one fine day, the Ayurveda Vaidya replied. He says, Hitabhuk, Ritabhuk, Mitabhuk. So what is this koruk, koruk, koruk? In Sanskrit, koruk can be broken down into kaha aruk, who is not ill, kaha arugnaha, who is the non-ill person. And the answer here is Hitabhuk, one who eats the right things, and the hita in the larger context that we've discussed, Ritabhuk, one who eats seasonal things, and finally Mitabhuk, who eats just as much as is required. And as we had seen in an earlier class, the recommended amount to eat is that which can fit almost in a fist. That much of food is what your stomach can digest without being stressed. Food for thought. I thought we can end with a Shanti mantra, but I'd like to do it in a particular manner here. So when we do Sarve Bhavantu, I request you to join me in this dance. So Sarve, everybody, and the rule with Indian dance is that where your hand goes, your eye follows. Not the tip of your fingers, but follow its direction. So Sarve Bhavantu, be Sukhinaha. Create that excellent space within yourself. Next, Sarve, everybody, Santu, be Niramayaha, without any disease, and you remove all the crinkles of your aura. Okay, Niramayaha. Next, Sarve, everybody, Bhadram. Bhadram is being good, but it's not something that you can show in any manner, but you can bring it in your eyes. So that auspiciousness. So Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. Finally, Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavit. So let nobody have any kind of sorrow. Dukkha, here bad space. And this particular mantra on one side can seem like a good prayer of well-being, well-wishes for everybody. But the way I understand it, it is also a certain responsibility. Because if one says, Sarve bhavantu sukhina, let everybody be happy, and oneself one is like all the time, then one doesn't have truth in the words one is uttering. Like Sarve santu niramayaha. So let everybody be without disease, and Corona taught us how important it is for every individual to maintain good health, because it can spread and destroy as well. So that responsibility of having good health. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu. May everybody see the good. This is only possible when every other individual is practicing the good. When you practice the good, then we can ensure that people around you are at least seeing the good. And there's a lot of mirror neuroning that is happening here. So how does one become a model of what one would like to experience in one's own life? Finally, ma kasya dukkha bhag bhavit. Let nobody have any sorrow. And the best person to start that non-giving of sorrow is the individual themselves. So one has to try as much as possible not to create any bad spaces around oneself. And finally, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So I'd like to chant it once. I'll say it and you repeat after me. Astu. So, Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. You end with a smile. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So I won't say much, but only invite us to be more established in oneself as much as possible, as often as possible, and use the different techniques, follow the dinacharya, and let's be in harmony in ourselves and with everything around ourselves.